Around 4,000 years ago, two cities rose like shining jewels in the heart of ancient civilization. They were so rich that people there literally walked over black gold with every step. Their wealth was so immense that when Abraham saw them from a distance, he thought he had glimpsed paradise on earth. These cities were so advanced that even today, archaeologists are amazed by the discoveries they uncover beneath the soil thousands of years later. But one fateful morning, everything changed. Fire rained down from the sky like a storm, and where once there were lush gardens rivaling the finest orchards in the world, only salt and devastation remained. How could two of the richest cities of the ancient world simply disappear, leaving behind a mystery that has puzzled generations? And what was so remarkable about life there that it still fascinates scholars and explorers today? Genesis 13:10 records something striking. When Lot looked up, he saw that the entire Jordan plain was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was not just poetic language, it was a literal description. Archaeologists have found that the valley where Sodom and Gomorrah once stood was one of the most fertile regions on Earth 4,000 years ago. The land had a natural advantage that turned otherwise barren soil into gold. Abundant water and mineral-rich soil that nourished lush crops. Recent studies show the Jordan Valley had multiple water sources. Underground rivers running like veins of the earth, natural springs that never dried, and regular rainfall, creating a rare and favorable microclimate. It was as if nature itself had designed the region to be a permanent garden, where fruits and grains flourished with minimal effort. But the city's true wealth came from something even more valuable than gold or crops: bitumen. Genesis 14:10 mentions the bitumen pits in the region, and historians explain that this black, sticky substance was the petroleum of ancient times. Egyptians paid huge sums for it to embalm their pharaohs, Mesopotamian builders used it to waterproof palace and temple bricks, and merchants transported bitumen hundreds of kilometers along dangerous trade routes. Whoever controlled these pits controlled an endless source of wealth that powered empires. Tall el-Hamam, an archaeological site believed by many researchers to be the original Sodom, shows impressive structures that reflect a highly advanced civilization. 10-meter-high walls protected the city. Complex gates with multiple security chambers controlled who could enter, and a sophisticated storage system suggests large-scale trade that reached across continents. Dr. Stephen Collins, who leads the excavations, found strong evidence that the city controlled key trade routes between Mesopotamia and Egypt, making it a global commercial hub. Salt was another source of enormous wealth. The Dead Sea, with its highly saline waters, produced exceptionally valuable salt, often worth more than gold in many regions. In a time without refrigeration, salt was essential for preserving food. Entire caravans traveled from faraway lands, crossing deserts and mountains, just to get this white gold, which could be traded for silver even in the most distant cities. The salt trade was so profitable that it created trade routes running alongside the bitumen routes, forming a dual economic network that made the region even richer. Studies of ancient farming show that the valley's soil, rich in minerals and nourished by many water sources, produced harvests 3 times larger than other fertile regions of the ancient world. Golden wheat, strong barley, juicy dates, and sweet grapes grew almost effortlessly, as if the land itself was helping its people thrive. There was so much abundance that Lot did not hesitate when Abraham gave him the choice of the best land. From his perspective, he saw the most prosperous region in the known world, a true earthly paradise where nature and geography seemed to guarantee endless wealth. But this extreme prosperity brought a dark side. When everything comes easily, when the land produces on its own and wealth flows like water, what happens to human character? Ezekiel 16:49 gives a troubling hint about the effects of excessive wealth. This is what began to corrupt Sodom and Gomorrah from the inside, turning blessings into curses. What happens when a society has so much wealth that no one needs to work anymore? Ezekiel 16:49 gives a clear and unsettling answer. The prophet points to 3 traits that defined Sodom: pride, abundant food, and extreme idleness. These were not exaggerations. They were a precise description of a civilization that had everything but lost its sense of humanity. Studies of ancient societies show a predictable pattern. Extreme abundance often leads to danger. Historians have documented this across many cultures. When resources are endlessly available, work loses its value, gratitude disappears, and a sense of natural superiority takes over, as if wealth is an inherited right rather than a gift. In Sodom and Gomorrah, the abundance of food was real. Archaeologists have found massive storehouses that could hold grain for years, underground silos carved from solid rock, storage chambers with ventilation systems, and evidence that the cities could feed populations far larger than they actually had. But when food is guaranteed for generations, human behavior changes. Anthropologists studying both ancient and modern societies have noticed a pattern. Extreme food security often leads to waste as a display of power. Throwing away food becomes a status symbol. Banquets turn into daily routines where extravagance replaces necessity, and celebration turns into excess. The abundance of idleness was even more revealing. In most ancient societies, everyone worked to survive. Shepherds tended flocks, farmers planted crops, and artisans made essential tools. But in Sodom, automatic wealth from the bitumen pits and the salt trade created a class of people who did nothing productive. Texts from contemporary Mesopotamian civilizations describe similar societies where idleness led to dangerous vices. When life has no challenges and no purpose, boredom becomes destructive, corrupting the collective soul and turning wealth into a deadly trap. People with endless time and limitless wealth begin searching for ever more extreme forms of entertainment. Boredom turns into addiction, and extravagance becomes the only way to feel anything. From this, the third element appeared: pride, an arrogance that corrupts the soul. Ezekiel uses a Hebrew word meaning arrogant pride. The kind of superiority that grows in people who have never faced real hardship, living in a bubble where the struggles of others seem irrelevant. This is the kind of arrogance that makes someone look at a starving stranger and think, "That's not my problem. It doesn't concern me." But even worse was growing in these wealthy cities. Ezekiel points to it immediately afterward, explaining why God found their situation intolerable. When a society stops helping those in need, it shows it has lost something essential to human nature: empathy, compassion, and the solidarity that binds people together. This coldness toward the needy ultimately sealed the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah. How did two of the wealthiest cities in the ancient world become symbols of cruelty? The answer lies in the second part of Ezekiel 16:49. The prophet reveals the sin that truly condemned Sodom. They did not strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy. In other words, they had plenty of resources to help, but they chose not to. Kindness became weakness, and indifference was treated as virtue. In the ancient Near East, hospitality was more than politeness. It was a matter of survival, a sacred code that connected communities and protected trade. The Code of Hammurabi, which existed during Abraham's time, even included laws ensuring travelers and foreigners were protected. Denying food or shelter was seen as a crime against the whole community. Sodom and Gomorrah flipped this tradition. They created a society where helping the poor was seen as weakness, and showing off wealth became the ultimate social goal. When everyone competed to display luxury, giving to those who could not repay broke the rules of status and supremacy. Archaeological discoveries at el-Hamam support this picture. Houses had elaborate, inward-facing courtyards, high walls separating properties, and no communal spaces for the needy to find help. The urban design promoted social isolation instead of community. Each family lived like an island in a sea of wealth, surrounded by loneliness. Genesis 19:9 records a striking moment. The men of Sodom shouted at Lot, saying, "Stand back, this outsider wants to judge us." Their violent reaction to someone defending foreigners shows how the society had become hostile toward protecting the vulnerable. In Sodom, justice was treated as a crime, and cruelty had become normal. Historians have noticed a pattern in extremely wealthy ancient societies. The greater the inequality, the harsher the treatment of outsiders. In Sodom, extreme wealth created a social bubble where the rich no longer saw the poor as human. Wealth became a shield against compassion. Later, rabbinic texts preserved traditions describing Sodom's judicial system, laws that protected the powerful and punished anyone who challenged the status quo. According to these historical sources, including rabbinic traditions and contemporary cuneiform tablets, there were strict rules that punished those who helped the needy. Judges could even confiscate their property. If these accounts are historically accurate, they explain why Ezekiel singled out the neglect of the poor as the heart of Sodom's corruption. Genesis 19:4 shows that indifference toward the needy eventually turned into something worse: active violence against defenseless foreigners. Ignoring the poor was just the first step. When a culture stops protecting its vulnerable, it only takes time before it begins harming them intentionally. Hospitality, a cornerstone of ancient civilization, was twisted into violence, a sign that Sodom and Gomorrah had crossed a point of no return. Despite having immense wealth, the cities were living their final days without realizing it. Lot chose to sit at the city gate every day. Genesis 19:1 notes this without explanation, but it is significant. In ancient cities, the gate was more than an entrance. It was the center of power. Mesopotamian legal codes from Abraham's time, like the laws of Eshnunna, show that city gates functioned as courts where elders and leaders judged disputes, formalized commercial contracts, and made decisions for the whole city. Sitting at the gate meant participating in local governance, exercising authority, and influencing the city's fate. Sodom was unique because of its strategic location. Trade routes connecting powerful Mesopotamia to wealthy Egypt passed through the Jordan Valley. Controlling these routes meant taxing every caravan, regulating commerce, and profiting from international trade. Cuneiform tablets from Mari, a city contemporary with Sodom, document extensive trade networks that included the Jordan Valley. Merchants transported fine textiles, precious metals, exotic spices, and crops along these routes for hundreds of kilometers. Cities controlling strategic points like Sodom charged fees for protection and services, enriching themselves from others' wealth. Genesis 19:1 also mentions a public square in the city, suggesting organized spaces for commerce. Excavations of Bronze Age sites show paved plazas next to complex city gates, designed to host large crowds on market days. Sodom's economy depended on this constant, bustling trade. Unlike societies based only on farming or herding, these cities had a diverse and advanced urban economy. Local artisans created high-quality goods, merchants offered sophisticated financial services, and administrators collected taxes while organizing the city's infrastructure. Luke 17:28 confirms that this commercial activity continued right up to the very end. Jesus notes that people were buying and selling as part of their normal daily routines. This was not a stagnant or declining economy. It was a thriving society, operating at full capacity until its final moments. If you believe that God uses history to teach lessons about the dangers of wealth without character, comment, wealth without God is empty. Yet beneath all this success lay a serious problem. Prosperity, which should have been a blessing, had become a moral curse. Luke 17:28 gives a detailed picture of Sodom's last moments, as it was in Lot's days. They were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. Each verb highlights a different aspect of normal life, continuing right up to the moment of destruction. The mention of planting shows that Sodom was not just a commercial city, it was also an active agricultural center. Genesis 13:10 explains that the valley was well watered like the garden of the Lord. Advanced irrigation systems harnessed the abundant water to produce exceptional harvests in an otherwise dry region. Paleobotanical studies in the Dead Sea area confirm that 4,000 years ago, the region supported intensive agriculture. Fossilized pollen shows the cultivation of cereals, legumes, and fruit trees on a commercial scale. The mineral-rich soil produced yields higher than neighboring regions, which is why Lot considered the valley more attractive than other available lands. The mention of building indicates ongoing construction and ambitious urban planning. Unlike declining societies, Sodom invested heavily in infrastructure, including irrigation systems, defensive walls, and monumental public buildings. The most revealing word in Luke's description is drinking. This does not simply refer to water or ordinary beverages. In the Bible, it often signifies alcohol consumption as part of social celebrations. Prosperous societies developed sophisticated entertainment cultures, with regular festivals and public banquets showcasing the city's wealth. Eating complements this image, displaying the abundance of bread and other delicacies noted by Ezekiel. Luke emphasizes that this abundance continued until the very last moment, with no signs of scarcity, famine, or economic crisis. Buying and selling indicate that markets functioned normally, transactions were completed, and contracts were signed daily. Economic life appeared stable and uninterrupted, creating the illusion of lasting prosperity. Luke 17:29 then describes the sudden, shocking transition. On the day Lot left Sodom, fire and sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed everyone. The word but highlights the dramatic contrast between total normality and instant destruction. There was no gradual decline, no prolonged warning. Life seemed ordinary right until the end, which made the destruction completely unexpected for the inhabitants. The biblical narrative deliberately emphasizes this contrast. Jesus used Sodom as an example of how divine judgment can strike even seemingly stable and prosperous societies without warning. The lesson is not about external signs, but about internal moral corruption, which can make a society vulnerable no matter how wealthy or successful it appears. Genesis 19:24 records one of the most dramatic events in the Old Testament, described in surprisingly precise and technical language. An exclusive film that explores "Then the Lord rained down fire and sulfur from the heavens on Sodom and Gomorrah." The repetition of "the Lord" and the phrase "from the heavens" is not just literary style. It emphasizes that something extraordinary happened in the sky that day, something beyond any natural phenomenon known to us. Modern geological research confirms that a catastrophic event really did occur in the Dead Sea region around 4,000 years ago. Dr. Stephen Collins, who leads excavations at el-Hamam, discovered a uniform destruction layer covering the entire city. This was not the result of war or an ordinary fire, but something geologically unique, a layer of ash and debris indicating extreme heat applied almost instantly over a wide area, as if the very air itself had ignited. Laboratory analysis of samples from the site revealed temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees, hot enough to vitrify pottery, melt bricks, and turn limestone into gypsum. These conditions were far beyond any ordinary fire. Dr. Collins also notes that the destruction was so severe the city remained uninhabited for more than 600 years, an unprecedented abandonment in the region. Genesis 19:26 mentions that Lot's wife became a pillar of salt. Geologists explain that the region contains massive salt deposits from the Dead Sea, where evaporating water forms large mineral layers. In extreme heat events, salt can crystallize around organic matter, preserving it in a process called saline mummification. This can turn bodies into salt-like statues that survive for millennia. If you believe God still acts in history as he did in Sodom, comment, "The Lord is righteous in all that he does." Regardless of the exact mechanism, science confirms that something extraordinary devastated the region in a very short time, far beyond any known natural event. The transformation was so complete that fertile land became a barren, salt-covered desert. This total devastation marked the end of two of the most prosperous cities in the ancient world, erased in hours, leaving behind only salt, ashes, and biblical memories of what life had been like in the richest valley on earth. The contrast between that lost paradise and today's wasteland is so striking that modern archaeologists are still amazed that such an advanced civilization could vanish completely. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is more than a biblical account. It is an eternal warning of what happens when wealth without character corrupts a society. What began as abundance and prosperity ended in total destruction, showing that true wealth is not measured in material goods, but in justice, compassion, and moral values that sustain a civilization. The region that once produced black gold and white gold, feeding nations and enriching empires, now serves as a silent reminder that moral decay can be more destructive than any natural disaster. If you want to learn more about life in Sodom and Gomorrah during those times, there is an exclusive film exploring the city and its secrets in detail. I leave this recommendation for you to watch next. May God bless you, and I'll see you soon.